The story of the Mende dirge is not merely a linguistic curiosity. It is a testament to the indestructible nature of the human spirit. It begins in the mid-18th century in the lush green landscapes of Sierra Leone, specifically within the Mende heartland. Here we imagine a young woman, perhaps an ancestor of Mary Moran, learning a simple 5-line funeral song. In her village, music was the bridge between the living and the dead. This specific dirge was a galdon, a song performed to honor the departed. Little did she know that this melody would soon become a vessel for the identity of a people who were about to be systematically stripped of everything else. When she was captured and forced into the horrific darkness of the Middle Passage, she carried no gold, no heirlooms, and no photographs. She carried only the rhythm of her mother's voice and the specific cadence of the Mende tongue. Upon reaching the barrier islands of Georgia and South Carolina, this woman and her descendants became part of the Gullah community. Because of their isolation on coastal rice plantations, they were able to preserve more of their African heritage than almost any other enslaved group in North America. We transition now to the life of Amelia Dawley, born in the late 19th century in the small community of Harris Neck, Georgia. Amelia grew up in a world where the past was whispered in the old talk. As a child, she watched the elders and listened to her mother, who taught her a song that sounded like no other English hymn. Amelia didn't know the literal translation of the words, Agbevili Mbedegbe, but she knew the weight they carried. She sang them while working, while mourning, and while raising her children, ensuring the phonetic precision remained intact, even as the conscious meaning of the Mende language began to fade into the mists of time. The year 1932 marked a pivotal moment in this cosmic timeline. Lorenzo Dow Turner, a brilliant African-American linguistics professor from Howard University, arrived in rural Georgia. At a time when mainstream academics dismissed Gullah as bad English or broken speech, Turner recognized the echoes of a continent. He met Amelia Dawley, and with his heavy recording equipment, he captured her voice. Amelia sang the 5-line dirge with a haunting clarity. Turner spent years meticulously analyzing the recording, eventually identifying over 3,000 African words in the Gullah dialect, spanning 31 different languages. However, the specific recording of Amelia's song remained tucked away in archives for decades, a dormant seed waiting for the right soil to sprout. Amelia lived out her life in Georgia, a quiet guardian of a linguistic miracle, passing away before she could ever know that her voice would one day bridge an ocean. The narrative shifts to the late 1980s, where the baton was picked up by Joseph Opala, an anthropologist, and Cynthia Schmidt, an ethnomusicologist. While researching in Sierra Leone, they played the 60-year-old recording of Amelia Dawley for villagers in the remote region of Senahun, Angola. The reaction was electric. An elderly woman named Baindu Jabati listened to the scratchy recording and began to weep. She recognized it instantly. It was the same funeral dirge her family had preserved for centuries. The miracle was complete. The song had survived in 2 places, 4,000 miles apart, through 2 centuries of separation. The African branch of the family had kept the song to remember those who were lost to the sea. The American branch had kept it to remember a home they had never seen. This discovery led to the final chapter of this epic, the life of Mary Moran, Amelia Dawley's daughter. Mary had grown up hearing her mother sing that strange, beautiful song in Georgia. In 1997, Mary embarked on a historic homecoming to Sierra Leone. When she arrived in the village of Senahun, Angola, she was greeted not as a stranger, but as a long-lost daughter. The climax of her life's journey occurred when she stood face-to-face with Baindu Jabati. Together, the 2 women, one from the American South and one from West Africa, sang the dirge in perfect unison. For the first time in 200 years, the song was whole again. The lyrics, which spoke of waiting for the spirits to return, had finally fulfilled their prophecy. Mary Moran spent the remainder of her life as a symbol of the Gullah-Sierra Leone connection. She became an advocate for the preservation of Gullah culture, sharing her story with the Smithsonian, PBS, and the BBC. She lived with the profound peace of knowing exactly where she came from. When Mary eventually passed away, she did so knowing that the chain was no longer broken. Her life, and the lives of Amelia and the unnamed ancestors before her, proved that while bodies can be enslaved, the soul memory carried in language and music is invincible. Their legacy lives on in the archives of Howard University and the Smithsonian, serving as a beacon for millions of members of the African diaspora searching for their own song home. The legacy of the song did not end with the final notes of the 1997 reunion. Rather, it transformed into a living monument that redefined the identity of the Gullah people and the descendants of the Mende forever. As Mary Moran aged in her home in Georgia, she lived with a quiet, regal satisfaction that few humans ever achieve. She had looked into the eyes of her history and heard her mother's voice reflected in the throat of an African sister. This realization changed her daily life. No longer was she simply a resident of a small coastal town, she became a matriarch of the global African diaspora. She spent her final years meticulously documenting the Gullah traditions, ensuring that the younger generation understood that their shouts, their basket weaving, and their peculiar dialect were not marks of poverty, but badges of ancient royalty. When the time finally came for Mary Moran to transition from this world to the next, the funeral was not merely a local affair. It was a cosmic closing of a circle. It is said that as she lay in her final days, the five-line Mende dirge, Agbe Vili Mbedegbe, was whispered like a prayer by her bedside. Her death served as the final bridge. In the Mende tradition, a person is not truly gone until their song is no longer sung. Because of the work of Lorenzo Dow Turner, Joseph Opala, and Mary herself, her song will never fall silent. It is now digitized in the Smithsonian Institution, archived at Howard University, and taught in history books as the ultimate proof of cultural resistance. The impact of her life's journey echoed back across the Atlantic to the village of Senehun, Angola. Upon hearing of Mary's passing, the villagers there, led by the descendants of Baindu Jabati, performed the same ritual they had performed for centuries. But this time, they weren't singing for a lost soul taken by the water people, the slave traders. They were singing for a woman who had found her way back. They sang to welcome her spirit home to the red soil of Sierra Leone, effectively finishing a funeral rite that had been interrupted 200 years prior. The song had functioned as a spiritual GPS, guiding a stolen lineage back to its point of origin. In the grand tapestry of Black history, the story of the Mende song stands as a refutation of the Middle Passage as a total erasure. It proves that while the shackles could break the body and the plantations could rename the person, they could not colonize the melody. The song lived in the subconscious. It lived in the rhythm of the rice hoe and the lullabies of the nursery. It survived the Civil War, the Jim Crow era, and the Great Migration. Today, the legacy is carried on by linguists and historians who use this story as a Rosetta Stone for the Gullah Geechee heritage. It serves as a reminder to every person of the diaspora that their roots are not gone. They are merely buried, waiting for the right voice to call them forth. Mary Moran died as a woman of two worlds, a bridge across the Atlantic, and a testament to the fact that memory is the strongest form of resistance. The 5 lines of the dirge remain the most expensive property her family ever owned, a treasure that no master could steal and no time could erode. As the sun sets over the marshes of Georgia and the forests of Sierra Leone, the wind seems to carry that same 5-line melody, proving that love, language, and blood are a single, unbreakable chord.